event of the Women Major Group today. I'm sure that we'll have a good time and very amazing debate. Please, we have planned our website, our side event will be moderated by Shaima Aly Andrassy. She's a Women Major Group organizing partner for Arab States, head of Kenana Association for Women Empowerment in Egypt, and president of Net Impact for Women Economic Empowerment, Gulf Cooperation Council Countries Chapter. Let me recall a little bit our side event objective. We really want to take advantage of the regional forum mechanism that was held some months ago and see what has happened and strengthen the high-level political forum process from a feminist perspective. So today we will be looking for what the regional forum, how the regional forum has been organized and how it could strengthen the participation of women in national VNR processes, as well as regional and global processes. I will hand over the mic to our coordinator, our facilitator, let's say she's our moderator, who will now take over the side event and will be working with all our guest speakers. So Shaima, please have the mic and good luck. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cecile. Thank you for the introduction. Thanks everyone for attendance. We have the side event remotely, unfortunately, given the current circumstances, and to offer an in-depth discussion focused on the challenges and lessons learned from the national and regional engagements and coordination mechanisms in different countries and regions, and its relevance in strengthening the HLPF formations and processes from our own feminist perspective. We will be going to address today views and concrete recommendations building on our experiences at national and regional levels for more inclusive, action-oriented and transformative high-level political forum, as we all are seeking. As you know, Women Major Group prepared a very transformative position paper and many of you maybe took part in this, for the 2020 HLPF, upon which our dialogue today will be built on. Since we will have questions in rotations, so firstly, I would like to introduce our esteemed panel members, and I am very grateful to have them today with us. Firstly, I would like to introduce our first panel member, Mr. Mibwi Kalumbu Aimé Madar, Head of Division in charge of Climate Change in the Ministry of Environment and Sustainable Development, Democratic Republic of Congo. Mr. Aimé Kalumbu is a bioecologist and conservationist specialist by profession with over 20 years of experience. He has served as a civil servant in the DRC as the environmental expert in charge of the monitoring and the evaluation. He has been also head of office at the Permanent Secretariat of the Interministerial Committee for the Environment, SPICE, and he has been also engaged as the head of division in charge of climate change in the Ministry of Environment and Sustainable Development, including the national focal point to the United Nations Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, and to the Intergovernmental Panel of Experts on Climate Change, IPCC. So I would like to welcome him with us today as a panel member. The second panel member I would like to introduce, and I thank her for her participation, is Ms. Alicia Bárcena. She is the United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean Executive Secretary, which is known as ECLAC. Ms. Bárcena assumed the office as the Executive Secretary of the Economic Commission for the Latin America and the Caribbean on 1st of July 28. She had previously served as the Undersecretary General for Management at United Nations headquarters in New York, Chef du Cabinet and Deputy Chef du Cabinet to the former Secretary General, Mr. Kofi Annan. I thank her so much for her participation. The third panel member is Ms. Valentina Bodrug, Lungo. She is the president of Gender-Centru Moldova Platform for Gender Equality. Ms. Valentina has over 18 years experience in gender analysis, gender planning, and gender mainstreaming, women's political empowerment, women and peace and security. She contributed to the elaboration and advocacy of gender equality law, domestic violence law, and national program on ensuring gender equality between 2010 to 2015. Also, she was engaged to draft the strategy on domestic violence in Moldova and many other functions. During many years, she was member of a governmental committee on gender equality, author of more than 130 books and articles in gender issues, family problems and counseling, GBV. Since 2020, Ms. Valentina Bodrug Lungo is an organizing partner of Women Major Group. So I thank her so much, Valentina, for your participation. We have Ms. Medha Sharma. She is the Chief Executive Officer of Visible Impact. And Medha is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Visible Impact in Nepal. She is passionate about women and young people's sexual reproductive health and rights, related advocacy, service delivery, and research. She has been engaged in national and international process of mechanisms like FP 2020, CPG, CEDAW, UPR, among others. She has also been involved closely with the Sustainable Development Goals and HLP processes, including drafting committee of this year, civil society organization-led voluntary people's review for Nepal. And finally, I would like to thank her, of course, for her participation, Ms. Medha. And as the last speaker or last panel member, we will have Ms. Danièle Ramiaramanana, focal point for Madagascar, African Women's Network for Community Management of Forests, which is known as REFACOF. Daniela is a researcher and an agronomist by profession and a gender advisor. In her current role, she is the head of this research center in the South High Plateau of Madagascar. Daniela has over 15 years of experience in gender and rural development. In 2009, she joined the REFACOF, the Women African Network for Community Forest Management, and act as a national focal point in Madagascar. So I thank her so much for her participation. Finally, thanks a lot for your participation, the attendance, and our panel members. As I would like to let you know that we will have rotational questions section, followed by questions and answers between our participants and our esteemed panel members. I kindly remind my dear panel members that you will have from 5 till 6 minutes maximum for your answers, so we can manage the 1 hour. I would like to ask my first question to Mr. Mabiyo from DRC. And my first question is, food security is important as the first goal and second goals of a sustainable development goals, as you know, are zero poverty and no hunger. Women play a very important role in the supply chain management and food security. Therefore, I wish if we can have a brief about the DRC strategies in place to achieve these 2 goals, and women, especially rural women, rule in these strategies. Also, I would like to ask him how DRC creates a process to ensure that the aspirations of those women, especially rural women, as well as their challenges given the climate changes we witness now, are reflected into the voluntary national review of DRC and other strategic submissions of the government to be considered in the UN spaces, including HLPF. So this is my question, and in response, he will have a presentation, and I thank him for this. So over to you, Mr. Mugwi. We will have the presentation now. Does everyone see the presentation on screen?
Yes.
But unfortunately, it seems, is Mr. Mobwi online, Shinaz and Cecile?
I don't see him online. I don't know, but I don't see him online so far. He was also complaining about the connection this morning.
Okay,
Maybe we can skip him and come back to him later.
Yes, sure. We can now move to the first question to Miss Alicia. Okay, so till Mr. Mobwi is online, I would like to ask a question to Miss Alicia from ECLAC. I would like to ask her how ECLAC supports the RCM in the region. And from your point of view, what is the best practice you consider in terms of foreign, equitable, and strategic civil society government partnerships to implement and monitor the progress made in the Sustainable Development Goals implementation process from your point of view? So over to you, Ms. Alicia.
Thank you so much, Madam Moderator. I'm really very pleased to be with you this morning. I first of all want to pay tribute to a very long-standing friend, which was Bella Absuk. She was the founder of this women's major group back in 1992. And she and I worked together in the Earth Summit, and she pushed so hard for the gender equality agenda. And I also want to recognize that the women's group and the feminist groups are pioneers in fighting for equality. ECLAC has a very long-standing experience in promoting the participation of women in feminist organizations, and we have done it through the Regional Conference on Women in Latin America and the Caribbean, which started more than 40 years ago. More than 40 years ago, we started with the Regional Conference on Women, which is one of our subsidiary bodies. Is a very strong, I would say, setting where governments, women's organizations, and also ministries from other sectors participate very actively. And we have been pioneering in many ways in having a regional gender agenda. We have, for example, the Montevideo strategy, which was adopted last January in this 14th Regional Conference on Women, and is dedicated to see how do we empower the women's organizations and, of course, the institutional frameworks on gender. And basically, it's oriented towards gender equality, women's rights, and we are working on three fronts. Basically, is how do we empower the economic autonomy of women? And by that, we are disaggregating data. We have a correlation between the Women's Conference and the Statistics Conference of the Americas, in which we work together to disaggregate data, because this is one of the most important things we have to do, is to break the statistic silence, and that is to make sure that we have data to show the inequalities between men and women, for example, in the labor market, for example, in salaries, where women are earning almost 24% less than men when they do jobs that are equivalent. And basically, so economic autonomy is one of them. The political autonomy, that is how can women reach to positions of high level. And the third is the physical autonomy, that is protection of violence against women. And what are the elements to do that? What are the instruments to do that? In certain way, we have also institutionalized mechanisms where the promotion of free, prior, and informed consent on the part of women, and not only women, we are doing this for everybody. We have, for example, the Escazú agreement, with which ECLAC is pushing very hard. It's based also in one of the Rio agreements, which is access to information, to justice, and to civil participation, that brings in, of course, all civil society organizations, and most importantly, indigenous peoples and women, so they can present their issues. Now, this regional conference on women reports to the Regional Forum on Sustainable Development, which we hold every year, and of course to the high-level political forum. Let me just finish by saying in this first question, Madam Moderator, that I am very concerned that we have to protect the agreements we have reached both in the Beijing conference and in the regional conference on Latin America and the Caribbean, because in some sense, I believe that we are going somehow backwards. And this COVID-19 is hitting, most importantly, women. We know that women are the most hardly hit. They belong to the informal sector. They are not protected in many fronts, and they are doing a lot of work that is unpaid work that they do at home, and they have been under a lot of pressure. So what I want to say is this movement of women, and what we have to say in this high-level political forum is that we cannot afford to go back to, we have to make sure that we have to go forward in the women's rights on physical, on economic, on political autonomy, and that we have to make sure that ECOSOC, high-level political forum, our regional forums, and our conference of women's in Latin America and the Caribbean make sure that we protect women, particularly in the aftermath of COVID-19, where we have to make sure that measures are put together to protect women all over the world. Over to you, Madam Moderator.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ms. Alicia, for such insightful presentation and statement. What I would capture now is that ECLAC indeed has a long history in women engagement, as you stated, since 40 years ago. This mechanism reviews, it mainly contains the institutional reviews on gender issues. How we empower the economics, it's very important, and also based on gender segregated data, which is actually a very pivotal pillar in order to proceed with, if we're talking about gender equality. That you can break the statistics silence, as you stated, on gender segregated data. You address the three pillars. The first, as you stated, is the economic autonomy for women. Secondly is the political autonomy, and third pillar is the physical autonomy. As you stated, there are mechanisms in place to ensure women's rights based on Rio agreements, which facilitates civil rights protection for women. These regional conferences, as you mentioned, on women feed into the Sustainable Forum for SDGs. We have to protect the Beijing Declaration, and I think it's something that this call is regions in all regions, and we are calling for this protection now for Beijing stipulations and agreement all over the world, because we need to protect our gains and not to allow retreating from these gains. Finally, I will conclude with what you stated, which is very powerful statement, that we cannot afford to go back. Rather, we have to go forward on women's rights. I thank you so much for your statement. And my second question, I would like to address it to Ms. Danièle from Madagascar. Ms. Danièle, I would like to ask you, thanks for your participation. And my question is, as you know, the GSDR strongly critiques some growing inequalities within and between countries, as well as some elements of the current economic systems. What are the challenges women in the country, in your country, see to enhance equality between countries, to have a balance that's reflected in improving women's status in the global south? And how the HLPF can reflect these suggestions and provide tools and platforms to bolster this equality? So now the floor is yours, and thank you, Ms. Danièle, for your answer in advance.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night to everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to be one of the speakers for this important webinar. We recognize that to make the 2030 agenda a reality, a strong commitment by all stakeholders to implement the global goals is a must. Women still face many barriers in contributing to and benefiting from the sustainable development, and that concerns most, if not all, the SDGs. Today, I would like emphasize more on women are country specific. However, there is particularly strong evidence of the importance of improving women's participation in SDG process. This participation includes both the women at community level and women's association or networks like REFACOF, for example, engage in the promotion of women's rights. Ensuring participation of rural women through bottom-up approach to gather and analyze their constraints, challenges, opportunities, needs, women's equal participation and representation in processes is critical and issues. The participation of rural women in majority with low education level in the SDG process at national level remain a challenge. In Madagascar, for example, which is a very big island with many remote rural areas and with poor road infrastructure, access to official information and documents is challenging for people living in rural areas. They are underrepresented in such events, and that will make the aspiration of the SDGs real to communities, individuals, particularly marginalized people like women. The Women Association or network working at community encountered the similar challenge, participation in SDG process. Most of official meetings, events take place in the capital, and these associations have challenges to travel because of limited access to financing. So what should be done? There is a need to strengthen, support, improve access to resources, mainly financing of the associations promoting SDGs, for them to facilitate the collection of women's needs, constraints, and challenges, and of course, sharing the information. The Coordination Africa Regional Civil Society Engagement Mechanism was established last February 2020 during the African Regional Forum on Sustainable Development. We see this as an opportunity that will help improve the participation of all stakeholders at all levels in the countries with the African Civil Society Coordination. We hope to put strategies in place to be able to reach out to rural women. This coordination must work closely with the existing women's association in the country and have the capacity to mobilize adequate financial resources for this women's organization for them to play their role effectively. More attention to French-speaking women's association should be given. They are less involved in these processes because of language barrier. It is important to find a way to involve them effectively right from the community level. If this link is not ensured, then Francophone community, rural women from Francophone countries will be continually marginalized. More support from UNDC to the African Civil Society coordination is also needed by providing the adequate financial resources for more exchange at country level between countries and across continent. But last but not the least, building the capacities of women, rural or association or network is needed for them to fully contribute to the Agenda 2030. To conclude, for women to participate to the national voluntary report processes, there is a need to bring the process right at the community level and mobilize adequate resources to ensure that women's-led organizations take part to the process at all levels. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Danièle. It was a very important statement coming from someone who is actually working in field. The takeaways from your statement is that, as you stated, ensuring participation using bottom-up approach is very vital. You stressed on the importance of ensuring participation of rural women on national level, which is very critical. In Madagascar, as an example, which is very big island with many rural areas, it is usually very challenging for women to live in these remote islands and remote areas. Their voices might be ignored. However, through, as you stated, very important issue, which is networking and the solidarity building between women-led non-governmental organizations is quite important in order to have your opinion reflected in the UN spaces. You stated that it's very critical to ensure that these women are engaged in the monitoring and the implementation process of SDGs. You also touch base on the importance of improving access to resources for associations in order to supervise the SDGs implementation and reporting process. You stated that it's very important to ensure accountability of our government through this process and more attention to Francophone women, because usually language is a barrier. So definitely without this or without giving them the chance, the Francophone countries' women will continue to be marginalized, which of course it's against the Agenda 2030 that we shouldn't leave anyone behind. Resources and knowledge exchange between countries is very important to ensure equality between regions, and eventually building the capacity of women, which is critical to ensure implementation of Agenda 2030. And finally, and I conclude with your statement that mobilize adequate resources is very important to ensure women engagement. I thank you so much for your intervention and statement. And I move now for my next question. My next question is for Medha from Nepal. Firstly, I thank her for her participation, and I would like to ask her, Nepal is presenting its VNR this year. We wish to know what the takeaways you had from the APFSD, the Africa Forum for Sustainable Development, which were reflected into your VNR, and how or if you were able to influence the government's reviews. So I would like to ask her this one question, and I give her the floor now, Ms. Medha from Nepal.
Thank you so much, Shaima, and hello everyone. It's really nice to have share this platform with you all. So in response to your question, I would say Nepal's VNR report is in line with the Asia Pacific report that was developed around the Asia Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development, that is APFSD. And some of the 6 transformative entry points highlighted in the Asia Pacific report has also been adopted by Nepal as its next step to accelerate the implementation of SDG. One of the main issues raised at APFSD was also the disconnection of SDG agenda at various tiers and the need to linking national, regional, and global dimensions of sustainable development. So Nepal's VNR also sees this as a very strong need to focus on the localization of SDG. Also, APFSD highlighted on the need for follow-up mechanisms, which the Nepal's VNR report has also adopted by focusing on the strengthening of the institutional and the statistical system. At the CSO level too, I think this year we had quite good influences. I could see that young people's voices were very strong this year compared to what we had 3 years back. And Nepal was also able to organize a separate youth forum ahead of a voluntary people's review. Both the government and CSO networks were inviting each other to their consultations. And young people also brought the recommendation from the regional youth survey that was conducted around APFSD to these discussions. And youth networks like Right Here, Right Now also handed over a separate youth recommendation to the National Planning Commission. So in in this way, I would say Nepal's VNR has been able to localize the learning from the regional process to some extent. However, one of the major challenges was to have SRHR, the sexual and reproductive health and rights, especially that of young people, in the report as a very significant driver of change. So while APFSC online survey and alternative CSO reports have highlighted on the SRHR of diverse young people, VNR has been able to see it in the context of safe motherhood services only. For example, the report aspires to reduce maternal mortality rate, but the imperative role that quality, stigma-free, and youth-friendly safe abortion services would play on reducing MMR is not regarded. Also, sexual and gender minorities, persons with disabilities, and other marginalized groups' rights are included, but only in the context of social protection. But a very important part of social protection, that is sexual and reproductive health and rights, is not envisioned. Despite CSO voices on these regards, there were still some gaps to influence the VNR process, and the final VNR report still falls short in assessing the progress on gender equality and sexual and reproductive health and rights of women, girls, and young people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Medha from Nepal. The takeaways were very important from your presentation. Firstly, as you stated, Nepal was very strong in making this linkage between the national forums and the SDGs indicator reporting included in the VNR. The institutional system improvement was important, and it was evaluated through the voluntary national review. What was the most important note was the young people engagement, that their voices were well communicated in the voluntary national reviews, speaking about the SRH and rights, etc. And Nepal facilitated the youth forums through the preparation of the VNR, where they were able to engage youth in this process. Of course, they handed over recommendations for National Planning Commission, so they had the chance, even as constituencies, women and youth, to hand over some recommendations for further improvement. And you stated that learning from regional process was very important and beneficial to develop an inclusive voluntary national review. And finally, you stated that voluntary national review included also the needs of women, speaking from your own point of view, the SRH and rights needs. But you stated very important point, which I will conclude with, which was assessing progress still was missed. The assessing progress on gender equality specifically, and SDG 5 maybe, was still missed, and maybe in the second VNR, you will be able to elaborate more on the improvement in terms of progress in SDG 5. So I thank you so much for your statement, which was very important intervention from your local perspective. Now I would like to move to my first question to Ms. Valentina. Valentina from Moldova. I would like to ask her, for Moldova, 2020 was the first VNR. How do you think is that women-led non-governmental organizations and civil society managed the preparation process for this voluntary national review, and how far the government in Moldova was appreciative to your inputs and accretions? Over to you, Ms. Valentina.
Yeah, thank you very much for your question, Madam Chair. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. At the beginning, I would like to mention that from the beginning, several civil society organizations in Moldova, including the Platform for Gender Equality, were invited to participate in the VNR process. But due to the COVID pandemic, the consultation process was more difficult. The State Councillary organized 4 virtual meetings where only some NGOs participated. We have proposed several suggestions on information and gender indicators, some of which have been included in the government report. We received information and invitation to participate during the HLPF process in VNR lab dedicated to the Republic of Moldova experience in Agenda 2030 implementation. Unfortunately, several NGOs at the local level, some disadvantaged groups, could not participate due to the technical limitation. At the same time, I would like to stress your attention on the importance of strong monitoring mechanisms at LGPL level, to include civil society shadow reports and active involvement on the same base as the governance, to place our reports on United States website. I would like to strongly recommend to take into account the regional and global human rights monitoring mechanism, as CEDAW Convention, at Beijing Platform for Action, at Human Rights Council, in order to increase accountability through VNR process. And also I'd like to mention by special note our experience on VNR process at the regional level, managed by RCM mechanism, but UN Women Major Group was an important tool for LGPF preparation. And we think only common effort, we can do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Valentina. And from the takeaways from your statement is that you provided a strong recommendation that it is very important to tap into the available human rights protection mechanisms which are in place, including the Beijing Platform for Action, for example, in order to strengthen the VNR process and also the HLPF process. So it's very important to use these human rights declarations and the agreements which were actually signed by our governments to hold them accountable, to have more strengthened or more what we could say stronger and quite articulating VNR. So this is very important. You highlighted the requirement for a holistic reform in this case. So I thank you so much for your statement. And I believe that we have only 20 minutes remaining. So I would ask participants to, if they have some questions, and our panel members will be happy to answer.
May I ask a question?
Sure, please, please, the floor is yours. Present yourself.
Hello, this is Kazi Baby from Bangladesh. So can I ask a question?
Yes, sure, Kazi. Please go ahead.
Yeah, actually we are working with the poor community, poor women and girls, but there are a lot of domestic violence are going on during the COVID situation. You know, lockdown is happening and the small room, 5-6 people are living. So in this situation, how it is possible to aware the people about the against domestic violence and how the young girls will save their physical connection, because you know there are a lot of violence is going on, for the children are not able to go to schools, they are at home, and there are many physical abuses happening. So how we can overcome this situation? Do you have any idea?
Yes, thank you so much for your question. And maybe I would like to address this question given the history of ECLAC, because they have a lot of women engagement process and response to GBV in Latin America. Maybe Miss Alicia would take this question and respond from the experiences they have in the region.
Thank you so much, Madam Moderator. I'd be very happy to do that. First of all, I think that that our colleague is touching upon a very important issue, which is violence. And most of this violence occurs basically in the domestic environment. So the government and the public sector and the communities have to establish helplines. This has been very useful in Latin America and the Caribbean, and also care centers where women can move together with their children even, or the children will be moved to special centers that are under the let's say auspices of the public sector, of local authorities. That has been something that helps a lot. But we believe that we have to go to the roots of the problem, and the roots of the problem are in the culture of privilege, in the colonialism, in the patriarchal behavior, and we have to address these issues solidly. And I think that the way to do this is, first of all, to make sure that women have more participation in the public decisions, in the political decisions, number one. In Latin America and the Caribbean, we have progressed on that front quite a bit. Now, more than 31% of women are present in the parliaments, and I think this is extremely important. And also, we need women in the decision-making of local authorities, because men are not sensitive sometimes to these problems that women are facing, and girls and adolescents are facing, and even childs. So, and the third thing I want to say is that we have to make sure, and this is what we have done in ECLAC, we are trying to analyze where are women, where are they in the territory, what are they doing, how are they participating in the productive sectors, how are they working in agriculture, for example, or agro-industry, or else in the manufacturing sector, or in services. Most of the women are working on very low productivity jobs and very precarious and low salaries and high informality, so we have to assist them. The other question we have found is that digital economy can be beneficial for women if it's really truly inclusive. If women have access to digital, to a mobile phone, for example, helplines are accessible for women in a more conducive way. So we feel that conducive for gender equality and for gender protection, digital economy can be one of them. And the last thing I want to say is that here in Latin America and the Caribbean, we have programs of cash transfers that are conditional cash transfers at the beginning. Now they're becoming more non-conditional cash transfers that go to women, by the way, and that are doing something very important, and that is financial inclusion. And that means that women start to have more autonomy on the money they get, and therefore this helps a lot in terms of, in certain way, emancipation, and give them dignity. And then, of course, in the household, then women are much more respected because they are the ones who are bringing the money, by the way. We have in ECLAC another very important thing, which is the Gender Equality Observatory for Latin America and the Caribbean, with the participation of many organizations, both UN organizations and civil society organizations. Why is this observatory so important? Because you visibilize and you make evident what are the problems, and you can really look at unpaid care, domestic work, violence, women's poverty, what is happening in all these fronts, and you can put that on top. And we have, for example, a femicide index also, because femicide is one of the greatest problems that we are facing in Latin America and the Caribbean. Most importantly, I just want to say something, but probably this is going to be my last intervention. I want to say that the regional commissions, we the regional commissions, we are 5 of us, one in Asia, one in Africa, one in Middle East, and us in Latin America and the Caribbean and in Europe. We all have instances, regional conferences of women, and we have common regional roadmaps, and we are looking at the sexual and reproductive rights of women. We are trying to put together, I would say, strategies that can be helpful at the national level. I was listening to Medha from Nepal, that she was saying that she benefited from the regional processes. And this is what we want to do in this South-South cooperation. And by the way, I think we have in the South a tremendous work to do, because poverty is in our front, and we have to make sure that women are going to be key, for example, in the building back better, for example, after COVID-19. So I just want to say that we have to eliminate the culture of privilege, colonialism, patriarchal behaviors, and that just can be done with data, with information, with digital economy, bringing the development to the women. And I want to end by saying that I always quote Madeleine Albright when she says that there is a special place in hell for women who do not help other women. We have to help each other. We have to work together. Thank you so much, Madam Moderator.
Thank you so much for Ms. Alicia for the great answer. And the takeaways are actually very important that government and community have to establish mechanisms to address GBV, and the establishing protection center might be also very helpful. Going to the roots of the problem, as you stated, the patriarchal behaviors and addressing structural barriers are very important. And I will end with the same statement or the same saying that there is a special place in help for women who don't help other women. I thank you so much for your answer. And my second question, which was sent by our great facilitator, Ms. Shehnaz, she stated, is there any funding available for the marginalized women? I don't know this question. It's about resources. And maybe this question I would address my dear organizing partner, Ms. Valentina, if she knows about facilities to enhance the resources provided for civil society, speaking of course about Central Europe region. So over to you, Valentina, if you have some advices in order to mobilize more resources for such networking for civil society organizations.
Thank you very much, but it's not easy to have answers on this question. I think it's very important in order to have a good access to resources, to have a strong position and strong network. Based on our experience at regional level and local level, we worked a lot in order to receive funds, but only, as I mentioned, on common efforts and based on solidarity, on common idea and strong dialogue and cooperation, civil society, development partners, we receive some funds. But it's most important from my point of view, how we manage these funds. Because it's important not only the number of women involved or trained women, but how many women improved the living conditions, improved their health, improved their rights based on this fund on different projects. On this case, I would like to mention the importance of cooperation between national and regional level, and then global level. I mentioned many times that we need to strengthen the connection between regional level and global. For example, in our case, HLPF process, to ensure better coordination and sustainability of our efforts and our resources, human resources and financial resources. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Valentina. This is very important notes you provided now. There is a criticality to create the synergies on regional and national level in order to mobilize resources. Right now, coalition, I believe that gaining or able to receive more funding than sole or individual organizations that working in silo with other non-government organizations. So networking is very important. Now I have a lot of raised hands. I would just take the first, that Miss Mary Kizu, if I pronounce it right. Miss Mary Kizu, the floor is yours for your question.
It's Mary Kizu from Zambia. I just want to know, how do we help women in areas to address their vulnerability to sexual and gender-based violence, owing to it that most of them are rooted into the traditional norms, which brings about inequality among themselves. Thank you.
So your question about sexual-based violence and how you can address this cause. I think this question was similar to our first one. So it might be, you can, maybe the record will answer your question because we addressed this as the first question from our attendants. So I think I will go to the next question from Ms. Donatos Lili. Ms. Donatos. So Donatus, she cannot speak, but she sent her question. Thanks for the good insight, Dr. Danièle. What are the measures in place to prevent girls from being prostitutes during the COVID-19? As many children are likely to drop out of school, many are falling into pregnancy. So thank you, Donatus. Lily from Kenya, and I will give the floor to Danièle, to Dr. Danièle, for her answer. Danièle from Madagascar.
Okay, the question is about the girls and the women who are, I didn't understand very well the question.
No, it is about the poverty rates during the COVID-19, because now there are a lot of girls out of school, dropped out, and they might be working as like, for example, maybe subject to sexual violence, maybe went into some trade, human trade. So what your advice is to address this declining in the welfare and the increment of the poverty rates among African girls, so that they are not trying to practice this going out of school and falling into pregnancy. So what are your suggestions from your country point of view?
Yeah, in Madagascar, there are, okay, the association, Women Association who work for the promotion of human rights are there really at the community level. So those associations are the one to assist and to inform, or to say that, or to motivate those girls to do something else, because of course now during this COVID-19, this association, for example, how to say that, give, how to say that, help those girls in making, for example, masks or something like that, so that they can get some money to do something else. So that is one way to for this association to assist those girls not to do this, for example, prostitution or something like that.
Okay, thank you so much for your answer. So it's very important to have some income generating activities based on the impacts of the COVID, like, for example, trying to benefit from the current needs, the commodities needed in order to reduce the increment of the poverty rate among girls and women in general. This is from your own country experience, so I thank you for this. There is a question for maybe our colleague Valentina would answer it. In case there is ignorance for the GBV reporting mechanisms on country level in Central Europe, what are the networks or what are the modalities that can be used by women and girls to report on GBV cases through the COVID-19? So floor is yours, Valentina, to answer this question from the Central Europe perspective.
Gender-based violence, it's a huge problem, I think, in all regions. And of course, we need to use all tools in order to prevent and combat this phenomenon. In this case, I would like to mention our efforts at regional level, and special that we used RCM platform, is a regional civil society engagement mechanism for SDG implementation process that we use also during the Beijing Plus 25 regional consultations. And in different situations, gender-based violence issues, gender-based discrimination issues was in the center of our discussions. And I think it's very important to have a very strong position, because unfortunately, there are many NGOs that had a different position and attitude on this question. But a special women's NGO should have a strong position that gender-based violence It's a human rights violation. There are no justification. And it's a question about legal framework, implementation, because all of the majority of countries have a good legal framework, but doesn't work. We need funds addressed, focused on specialized services addressed to women, victims of gender-based violence. And of course, I think special way, it's education program in order to combating gender-based stereotypes and to promote gender equality issues, to prevent gender-based violence. And it's important if we have a regional platform connected with national platforms. There are no global success without local, regional, and global connection. But it's more important to involve people, exactly women from rural area, from marginalized group, at community level, in order to have a platform for their voice and empowering, special social and economical empowering. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Valentina. So you tapped into three, actually, or you addressed the three issues. The first one is the legal frameworks. When they are available, it's very important to have implementation and enforcement power or mechanisms to enforce this legal framework, regulations and stipulations. Secondly is the educational programs that are able to address GBV. And thirdly is the synergies that can be created between the regional platforms and to connect them to the national platforms for knowledge exchange and experience sharing. This is very important, and maybe this would be our last question to from Maria Jose Lopertino for Miss Alicia. She asks, women want system change, and your era supporting a lot this fight in our region. How you see the influence of Latin America in the world in order to like mainstream changing financial system and the problem of debt? So over to you, Miss Alicia, to answer this question.
Thank you so much. I think it's a very pertinent question, because the only way for emancipation of women, we believe, is when they have economic autonomy. The women have to get out of, I mean, and I understand that just what Valentina was saying, we need, of course, institutions, we need legal frameworks, we need to put pressure. And this is where our activism has to be there. We have to show leadership. Now, in Latin America, we are trying very hard, very, very hard, to make sure that the economic sectors understand the importance of having gender equality. That is, that when women are included in the labor market, poverty goes down. When women are included in the digital economy, the economy has more productivity. So we have to show that women are not only victims, we are also, I would say, we are subjects of development, and we don't want policies that see us as objects. We want to be part of the elaboration of policies, and that's why nothing has to be done about us without us. And that's where I believe that the economy, and we have been working, for example, with the financial ministers and with the banking system, because we have demonstrated that women are better payers on credits, for example, than men. And they are investing, for example, more in assets than in current expenditures. But the problem is we have to solve the fundamental rights. There are many places where women don't have the right to have, for example, properties in land or in assets, and we have to work on that, and we have to put pressure. That's why the regional framework is important, because we can put pressure to countries and demonstrate that some countries are not moving enough. So I believe that we have to, I think, and this is the occasion to do this, because we're going to celebrate, or we are commemorating 25 years after Beijing, and we have to make sure that our voice is heard in all fronts. It's not women talking to women. We have to stop that, And I want to recognize that in ECLAC, we have a man director, which is participating in this webinar, by the way, Mario Castillo, who has brought a very interesting dimension to my gender division. So yes, and he's an economist, so he knows how to, and we are talking to the economic side of the equation. We have to do that. And we also have to talk to the legislative and to the judicial, because they have to understand that protection of women is key for society. Over to you.
Yes, thank you so much for this inclusive answer, because you touched upon several things, including that it's very important for women to understand that they are enablers for better economy, for more inclusive community, and to be empowered economically, not because it is like what we could say, it's their call, rather it is a macroeconomic goal in order to improve it more. And definitely having a talk or speaking with the legislators is very important to have this legal framework as an enabler for women economic empowerment. So I thank you for this. I can see that we have several questions, so maybe I can take just one more, and it is from Ms. Prajakta Dahamla, if I pronounce her name, because she has been raising her hand for a long time. Prajakta?
Yes, my question is for you. How does feminism contribute to our society?
Can you repeat it again, just one more time?
How does feminism contribute to our society?
Yes, what is the feminism movement contribution to our society? Maybe this question I would ask Medha from Nepal to answer it, our panel member.
Hi, Prajakta. I think that's a very important, very sweet question. So feminism is the principle that both men and women are equal. So, you know, it's not saying that women are superior to men or men are superior to women, or even like any people, regardless of their background, should not face any kind of discrimination. So when we are talking about, you know, having the lens that everybody's human right is to be respected, then I think our nation, our world can, you know, benefit in a lot of ways. So I don't know, I mean, from my own personal experience, I can see the empowerment that has happened within my family across generations. So the life that my grandmother lived versus my mother versus me, I think there's a huge difference in terms of access to education, in terms of access to empowerment that I have been able to receive. And I think I owe all of these to the feminist movement that has happened in my country and across the world. So it's more about changing the mindset of people. And I think if there's only one word or one thing I believe has been able to bring change in the world is feminism. So it's that powerful. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Medha, because this is what we could say a basic question, and you answered it perfectly. That the feminist movement actually so far has been helping women to address several structural barriers, including accessing to education, for example, in your area of work, which is accessing to SRH and rights services. It's very important, and I believe that it is related to our work as feminists on local level and regional level. So I think by this, I don't want to take more time from our panel members. I thank you so much, and maybe you can just send over your questions by email to each panel member, and later on we can send these questions over to them, and we will have like an open dialogue, endless one. Now I hand over to my dear colleague Cecile to close the side event.
Thank you so much. And thanks to the panelists, thanks to the participants for your questions. I forget to tell you at the beginning that we have been recording the session. So you'll get the link so that you can go over it again. We are pleased to have you. We have a very great session and a lot of ideas that will push us to continue our action towards gender equality, women rights, and women participation in the high-level political forum at local, national, and regional and global level. So I want to thank you so much for your participation. Please keep on, turn on for the Women Major Group event. We still have so many Women Major Group events for the next days to come. Just continue to follow, to contribute, to participate. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Yeah. Cecile, we have a proposal on chat to have a photo.
Oh, yes, yes, it's true. Hannah can pick us, do the photo, please. Hannah, are you around? Can you
yes,
make
I'm around. So I invite everyone to turn on their cameras.
Yeah.
And we will do a little.
Now the cameras are blocked. The camera is blocked.
Oh. Thanks to all for excellent question, excellent discussion. Of course, we understand there are more issues, but it was important
to go through that. And I'm going to do a chant, and I welcome you to do anything with your hands and just feel the power. So what do we want? System change. When do we want it? No!
System change.
What do we want?
System change. System change.
When do we want
it? System change.
Continue. I have so many pages to go through. What do we want? System change. When do we want it?
System change.
Oh, wow, fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a nice day and take care.
Take care. Thank you.
Take care too. Have a nice day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Hi, Felicite.
Hi, Celine. How are you doing today?
Good.
Okay.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your participation. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.